Good morning. I would like to welcome you to the 2019-2020 school year. And today we are going to have a professional development on organizing a classroom management plan for a positive learning environment. And I think that the time now, it's the time for us to prepare for our school year and focus on the things that will help set the tone for our school year. And our mission for CPA is just to teach, and model educational leadership opportunities that empower all students to be tomorrow's leaders today. We will redefine and transform how students learn through personalized learning and continuous support from our stakeholders. This mission is our ultimate goal. But the one thing that we need to think about as educators is, how will we reach or accomplish this goal? And I think us focusing on building that positive learning environment will be one of the beneficial tasks that we need to accomplish in order for us to reach our goal and focus on our school's mission. So today we're going to talk about how to build that positive learning environment. What's our school-wide goals? So what things will we focus on as a school, and what is our plan of action? So how will we reach our goal? Something for you to think about. How is it that we as educators can ensure that we create a positive learning environment for all of our students? That includes the students who may be more challenging, or that also includes the students who are more advanced. How can we make sure that we meet or accommodate the needs of all of our students within our school? And I have, myself along with the leadership team, has developed 3 areas that we figured we should focus on to help us reach our goal of building a more positive learning environment for our students. And goal number 1 is what we can think about now, and our ways that we can do this is, how can we build a community within our classroom? And if we build that community within our classroom, how will that branch out and help us build a community within our school? And one of the things that I remembered was, we have to think about how we approach our students. When I first started teaching, there was this one kid who came the first week of school, and he refused to come in my classroom. He stood outside the door, put his head on the wall, and he'd cry hysterically every morning. The assistant principal would come out of his office, and it would take him about 2 hours, but he eventually got him to comply and come in the classroom. Now, as a parent, I know that this isn't something that I would want my own child to do, because I want my child to enjoy going to school the same way that I want my students to enjoy going to school. But it allowed me to be very reflective. I was that bubbly first-year teacher. Hey guys, good morning, I'm ready. Very excited. I have a very loud voice. And after doing all my observations and finally sitting down with the student and actually figuring a few things out, we discovered that the student was actually a student who came from a home with multiple children. His mom was very rambunctious and loud, and those are the things that the student wanted to come to school to get away from. But as an educator, I was still giving my student that, and that's not what he wanted. And I say all this to say, we need to think about how we can accomplish our goal to build a community. And one of the things that we need to focus on is knowing our students. We have to do observations. We have to make sure that we're figuring out what interests our students. And we have to be sincere. Any person who's sincere will make sure that they are in tune with their students. My principal used to say back then, students don't really care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's a really true statement. Students will do more for you once they see that they can trust you, that you care for them, and you have their best interest at heart. We have to value input. We have to value what the students are telling us. We have to be very mindful and very cautious of how we approach things within our classroom. Allow time for collaboration. Allow students to share what their thoughts are. Allow students to have choice. Even in classroom activities, like if you're working on math, multiplication activity, allow those students to either decide, do I want to work with a partner to play a multiplication game and practice a skill, or do I want to practice my multiplication just using flashcards by myself? Because every student is different, and we shouldn't force them to do things that they're uncomfortable with. But we also have to be careful with that as well, because we still want to challenge our students. And we have to model self-management. We have to think about, how can we show students how they can handle themselves in certain situations. Giving them the tools, showing them how you talk yourself through those challenging moments, because we're all humans and students need to see that. So in order for us to accomplish our goal of building a more positive learning environment, or building a classroom community, we have to be sincere. We have to understand that students must always feel that their teacher wants what's best for them. And that's something that I read in a text by Ackerman. Students, we have to develop that relationship so students know, that we care for them. My previous students would always stop in, "Hey, Ms. Flowers, I just want to say hey and see how you're doing." Or I would walk by their classrooms and just, I see you. Acknowledging, that I'm still here for you. I'm that support. Once you're mine, we're a family and I will keep up with you. So that will help to build that relationship with your students by getting to know them, knowing their likes, their dislikes, their wants, and their needs. Our second goal for us to build that positive learning environment is to make sure we set clear expectations. We oftentimes know what we want our end result to be, but we don't oftentimes think about how we're going to get there. And I am that person. I always know what I want my goals to be. I know that this year I want to have 100% staff participation in extracurricular activities. But how am I going to get there? How will I plan to get there? And as educators, we also need to plan how we are going to get where our end is. So with students, it's academic performance, developing more social students, things like that. So we need to begin with the end in mind. If we're going on a road trip, and we know that we want to end up in Texas, we have to know when to turn left, when to turn right, when the speed limit's changing, when we need to take a break, things like that. And I think students need that as well. They need to have a plan. We know what our goal is. We know that we want students to grow academically. We know that we want them to develop socially. But how can we encourage students to do that? What plan of action do we have in place to get the students to our end results? But before we develop those expectations, we need background information. We need to know demographic data. We need to know what types of students we're working with. What are our personal needs as a school? And for example, our population is 99% African American. And we know that there are some cultural differences with African American children, so we need to consider those things. We have a lot of students who love to come to school to get away from their home life. We have a lot of children who are living with grandparents and want that motherly figure. So we have to think about things like that for our students when we're setting those expectations. And we also have to be sincere when we're doing it. We have to be specific. We have to tell them exactly what it is that we want them to do. We cannot assume that they know. We have to model and use positive phrases. We want to acknowledge when students are doing right. We want to reward their good behavior, and we want to be consistent. They need consistency. They want to know that you see that they're doing great things. And taking a moment to acknowledge that is very important. All right, our third and final goal is for us to develop rules and procedures. So as a school, that's something that I feel like we should work on because we need consistency and we need to ensure that our students feel welcomed at our school. Our survey determined that only 71% of our students felt like they were safe at school. 71%. And that means that there are some things that we need to consider in our classrooms, and how can we address this, the other 29% of students who don't feel like they're safe, who feels like their classroom is not a place where they can go as a safe haven. And that comes from the tone and the environment in that classroom. So developing our rules and procedures can help those students to understand that this is where they can come to feel safe. Research suggests that giving students a voice and choice and what the rules are in the classroom is very important. Providing students that opportunity at the beginning of the school year to have input of the types of rules that you implement in your classroom. Even with those rules, however, as educators, we have to plan ahead. We have to know what we want the rules to be. But then we have to guide our conversations with our students to make sure that we cover our ground, to make sure that we do incorporate those rules that we want to have in place. We have to have it posted. Students will need that constant reminder, which is one of the reasons why it's important for us to teach, model, reteach, teach, model, reteach. That's very important for our students. If they see us doing the correct thing, then they'll begin to do the correct thing as well. We have to give examples. Show students what's expected. You know, for example, one morning, one of our procedures in our classroom was for us to make sure that we sharpen our pencils every morning before 8:30. And if we didn't, we couldn't go to the pencil sharpener, but we had to cross our fingers for our teacher to acknowledge that we need a pencil, and she'll silently bring one over to us. So one day, when I wanted to reinforce that or reteach that procedure, I sharpened 2 pencils that morning, and then I was writing with pencils all day, and one broke, so I crossed my finger. And even with me being that person, my teacher's assistant came over and delivered me a pencil, and the students were able to see that that silent cue also works for me in the classroom. But we have to make sure that we're teaching our rules. We can't assume that students already know what to do. So that's something that's very important. So just to recap, our first goal was for us to build that community, getting to know our students, being sincere, understanding that our students have needs, and figuring out, being strategic about what interventions and what strategies we use to help meet the needs of our students. Goal number 2 is that we are going to make sure that we are setting clear expectations from day number 1. We know what our goal is, we know what our plan is, and we're going to make sure that we go step by step in informing students what they should do in order to make sure that they are meeting our expectations. And goal number 3 is we are going to make sure that we have developed positive rules and specific classroom procedures. And when I say positive rules, we want to make sure it's very brief. 3 to 5 rules is suffice. We want to make sure that they're positively stated, which means that we want to ensure that we're telling students what we want them to do, not what they shouldn't do. And we have to make sure that we're rewarding students, so we're acknowledging those good behaviors that they are displaying. And one thing that we're going to incorporate this year is our parrot point. And students can get a parrot that shows when they were caught doing something good, and parrots can be cashed in at our Parrot Buck store. So we want to try and focus on building that positive behavior instead of focusing on that negative behavior. So we're going to reward those students who are doing what is right, and hopefully we'll get that domino effect and those students who sometimes share that unwanted behavior. After being retaught, they can also earn them a parrot point as well for displaying positive or wanted behaviors. So how will we be held accountable for this? Each grade level will be responsible for creating a classroom management plan, and that management plan will include all of the things that were discussed today. We're going to include the expectations, our rules, our procedures, rewards, and consequences. We are going to focus on what we want those rules to be, but remember, we will develop those within the first week of school with our students so that we can hold them accountable for those rules, giving them that ownership. You helped me to develop these rules, so I need you to make sure that these rules are being followed as we enforce the rules within our classroom. These rules must be posted. Students will need constant reminders, reteaching, modeling by their teachers, showing them what's expected, and then behavior trackers. Those work well with whole class or either individual. Whole class trackers are those trackers where, I want to track how many times, maybe we can have a focus. Today we're going to focus on how many times we compliment each other, given that, positive community feel. How many times do we compliment? Oh, I heard this person doing a sincere compliment today, and tracking things like that, or tracking how many students turned in their homework that day. Or we can have individual trackers. If we notice that a student may have difficulty remembering to bring their library book to school each day, we can start a tracker. How many days of the 5 days per week did you bring your library book? And we can set up a tracker for an individual student and maybe have a parrot point at the end of the week for that student. So getting creative after we understand who our students are, what their needs are, getting creative and building those trackers and setting goals and making sure that those goals align with our classroom expectations and our rules will be beneficial for us. And finally, I just want to bring you a refresher. This year we are still utilizing our discipline flowchart. And this flowchart shares just a few little things with us about teacher managed and office managed behaviors. So if there's anything that's ever in question about a behavior that is displayed, because we do know we want to build that positive learning environment, but there may be some challenges that we encounter, we can reference this, and it tells you exactly how those behaviors should be handled and how a teacher should respond to those behaviors. So please review that and focus on that as you're developing your outline for that classroom management plan with those rules and expectations. But remember, the important thing here today is to allow students to help you develop those rules. Allow students to help you develop those procedures. And building that community with our students, being sincere, focusing on our students' needs and things like that will help us reach our end goal of working towards our school mission statement of building and teaching and modeling educational and leadership opportunities for our students. Thank you.